Gear Fool. We have a brick and mortar store here in Cedar City, Utah. Come on in. We'd love to see you.
Most important to me is that, not looking at the gear in the studio and breaking it down with a team member. It's getting it out under real world, sometimes worst case scenarios, as worst case as we can simulate sometimes.
Welcome to the Built to Hunt podcast, brought to you by the team of hunt advisors at the Huntin Fool magazine, where we are dedicated to helping our members go on more hunts with better information. Join Huntin Fool today at huntinfool.com. Welcome to another Built to Hunt podcast. On today's podcast, I'm super excited to introduce Jerrod Lile and Forrest Pike from Gear Fool. Gear Fool is a new endeavor for a Huntin Fool partnership that we started about a year ago. And obviously, one of the questions that we do get asked is, why Gear Fool? Why do you need to start a store? Keep your focus on hunting and all the things that Huntin Fool has done in the past. And the truth of the matter is that we take hundreds, if not thousands, of calls a year that actually turn into gear consultations. And particularly during the COVID peak, we were turning people into places that didn't have gear, etc. It was hard to acquire, and we decided that we wanted to be the source to be your complete hunting resource solution. Whether you want to figure out what unit you want to go hunt, what gear you need to go do it, etc. That's part of the reason why we created Gear Fool, why we launched this part of our business model. And we genuinely desire to be actively involved in the entire hunt planning process, including the execution of the hunt itself. So those are some of the main reasons. For listeners who are tuned into today's podcast, we do have a promo at the end. I'll disclose it. That will provide you a discount on the gearfool.com website. But in the meantime, I want to talk to Forrest and Jake and get to know them a little bit better. So I'm going to start out with Forrest Pike. He's the director of Gear Fool. Forrest, how did you get from birth to here?
It's probably going to be a storyline that won't really align with anyone else you'll find. But actually, I was born and raised in the Los Angeles area in a town that's not too far from Compton. But soon after graduating high school, I took to wildland firefighting across the West, eventually transferring up to the Arizona Strip. That's what brought me up to southern Utah. Did that for a bit, and then soon thereafter, ended up enlisting in the United States Marine Corps. Ended up doing 10 years active and 2 years as a reservist in my transition back to civilian life. Ultimately, Huey crew chief and spending some time operating miniguns and fast ropes. But that's how I ended up here at Gear Fool, and in the short, rather.
Nice. How about you, Jake?
Well, we know each other pretty well.
Yeah, little disclosure. We share the same last name. Jake's my oldest son. But you still took a pretty unique path on your own to get here.
Yeah. So obviously been hunting all my life with you, and mostly following you around in the woods or grandpa or everybody else. But then, the first job I ever had was working when you were working at Trophy Taker, packaging archery equipment, sharpening broadhead blades eventually when I was old enough to operate the equipment. And then
the verdict is still out on that. I'm not sure you were technically old enough, so don't disclose the age that I had you sharpening broadheads.
I was 30. And then went to Montana State University for school, ended up becoming an English teacher, taught English and U.S. history there for a bit, for 3 years at Bozeman High School, and then decided to transition down here for some better opportunities, some more flexibility with getting outside and I love that outdoor industry. Obviously, it's been the lifeblood of my family my whole life. Like, little brother's birth was paid for with elk sheds, so it's always sustained the family, and so it's really exciting and cool to be back in it.
That's awesome. I mentioned that Forrest is the director of Gear Fool. Jake is a gear consultant, for lack of a better term. So Jake's the kind of guy that you can call and talk to about all kinds of gear questions too. And we'll get to that a little bit later in the podcast, because I think that's one of the things that sets us apart from a normal store, from a normal outdoor store, I should say. What in the world brought you here, Forrest? I know for a fact, because I hired you, that you left a lucrative career and decided to come here to Gear Fool. So what's your motivations?
Yeah, so, I left active duty in 2018. I was fortunate enough to land a pretty, like you said, lucrative position in corporate maintenance management. However, that left me wanting something a bit more. And so when you showed that there was a door that would potentially open on my behalf, I mean, I wanted to come this way. It's no secret to friends that have known me for years that I enjoy the physically arduous and challenging things that come my way in life. I tend to do things the hard way, and that's not necessarily a good thing, but I enjoy it on the backside. I see it as a challenge that's been overcome. But whether it was wildland fire or, my time in the Marine Corps, I've seen where gear can make the difference in the optimization and the performance of a user in the field. And I enjoy that. And I wanted to come over this way and see if I couldn't kind of get more involved in that world, and then also, trying gear on the mountain more frequently and bringing in my wife and daughters is a win at the same time. So quite honestly, gear is where my character suits best. I'm not the one-on-one conversation type dude necessarily. That's going to win people over in a room, but when it comes to the technical mindset of gear, that's really kind of my wheelhouse. So
seems like a good fit then.
Yeah, I can't say that I enjoy it enough, really. I really do. So
Awesome. Same question for you, Jake. You left a teaching career to come over here and get paid less and work harder. What's wrong with you two?
Well, it's not getting paid much less.
Yeah.
I was getting paid
true.
too much money teaching. It was just too
such
lucrative
a
and too easy.
wealthy profession.
No, it's really the biggest thing is opportunity. Like what I really like about everything that happens inside of this building. I mean, there's a lot of companies in this building. As you mentioned earlier, we are really prepared to help people at every stage of the hunting game, and from helping them to select units to helping to apply them to helping equip them when they're going on the field. There's a lot of opportunity to be involved in a lot of things and a lot of freedom and flexibility. Like a lot of the stuff that exists in this building is because, you've made a decision to hire people that you believe are leaders, and you give them a lot of freedom within their own departments. And it's pretty clear to me looking around and like being part of this team that everybody's done a really good job of that. Like people take that initiative and run with it, and that's something that excites me, and I'm hoping to do the same thing here and carve out the things that I'm personally passionate about, like education and those types of things, but in the hunting space.
Nice. What are your guys' goals for Gear Fool, aside from financial, of course? Like, what personal kind of goals?
Time is precious. We're fortunate to have a little bit more personal time off for vetting gear, for example. But, coming from the military and the corporate background, I can say that PTO is often limited. So you get, a dude gets 2 weeks off a year. 1 week's going to be allocated to family willingly. Then there's 1 week left over to perhaps pursue some backcountry adventures. But I want to enhance that experience, as a goal of Gear Fool. I want to be able to outfit an individual, a guy or a gal, with gear that's been vetted. We know it's going to work for their use application. And then consequently, those lifelong memories with that little bit of time that they had in that given year, we're truly optimized, and they'll look back on it with good experiences. So that's my primary goal, enhance the experience of others.
Yeah, and I'd say the same. And my perspective, I'm coming at it from a different age bracket and demographic, and a lot of my background, like I'm not far removed from being the poor college kid who's agonizing over any piece of gear that you buy. And so one of my big goals,
how expensive of a wind checker you're going to buy for this year's hunting season?
Exactly. And so one of my goals for Gear Fool is, again, if we can help narrow down that vetted gear that is going to work, and we can help our users figure out what's going to work also for their budget. Like that's something that's really important to me, is making sure that we can equip people for the field in the best possible gear that they can afford, and help get over some of that agonizing over the gear for hours and hours and hours, because there's a lot of it now. There's so many more offerings even just in the past 5 years than there were 10 years ago, and more popping up all the time. It can be super overwhelming, especially if you're short on time and short on money. And so that's something that I'm really excited to help people with, is expediting that process and optimizing that however little amount of PTO they got.
Yeah, whether it's, a dude or a gal out there that wants to do a 10-day DIY moose hunt in Alaska, or if it's just someone that's trying to get outside the city lights for an overnight backpacking trip.
Sure.
I mean, like Jake said, we really want to service that full spectrum from newbie to, most advanced expert.
Nice.
But, I mean, time is finite. Why not make the most of it? You know what I mean? So.
Yep, absolutely. We run into the same thing at Huntin Fool a lot, and again, that's part of why we went into Gear Fool is people get paralysis by analysis because they are overwhelmed with all the choices out there, all the options. Whereas the best use of my time and money, those are the top two questions, and I heard that in both of your guys' answers that's what you're trying to help people make the most of.
Yeah, I mean, we're not interested in putting people into debt. We're going to take people's use applications and their budget into consideration, and based on our experiences with the gear that we're offering, we're going to offer them the best solution that suits them as an individual for that trip that comes further down the road. So
Right. So, Forrest, what's your personal gear vetting process look like? Is it comparative? Is it anecdotal? I'm sure it's a combination of a lot of things, but how do you go about vetting a piece of gear that you feel comfortable saying, this has the Forrest Pike endorsement on it, the stamp?
I don't know if I was born with it, but the mindset's rather technical. I like looking at the details. If I break down a given stitch pattern, I'm going to compare it to a comparative product and see why is there a difference and what is the betterment, or what's the better solution of the two. But what's most important to me is that, not looking at the gear in the studio and breaking it down with a team member. It's getting it out under real world, sometimes worst case scenarios, as worst case as we can simulate sometimes, to really get a good idea as to whether or not it's going to service the end user right. I think we've been doing that in the short time frame that Gear Fool's been running. I mean, we don't have Brady here. He's up in Bristol Bay, commercial fishing.
Covered in fish guts.
Yeah, I can't wait to get that dude back. But, I mean, the winter backpacking trip, right? So we got the new Sky Solace, one-person tent from Stone Glacier, and a few other winter products. And what did we do? I mean, we as a team, we went winter backpacking overnight in legitimately 9 feet of snow. How do we know it's 9 feet? Well, we dug down 5 feet, and I hit the top of a T-post on a barbed wire fence line with my little packable metal snow shovel. I mean, we do really want to go the extra mile to just make sure that it's authentically vetted. We don't take that phrasing lightly. We want to be the source of authenticity, legitimacy, and we want to be approachable. If people have questions, we're here to answer them. We're just common folk, to tell you the truth, doing a job that we love. So.
What about yours? You don't have as many years, like you said, shortly removed from the poor college kid realm. So still rolling those pennies for every purchase you make, right? So the vetting process for you, what does that look like?
Well, for me,
outside of my hand-me-downs.
Yeah.
Dad's hand-me-downs.
Lots of dad's hand-me-downs that didn't quite fit right, but were just good enough. Lots of rolling pant legs. No, I'm coming from the perspective of being those guys like you were mentioning, particularly during the COVID pandemic, the number of phone calls that you guys were getting about, like, where it basically turned into a gear consultation when we're referring to reaching out to those hunting, the advisors. And so I was really doing the same thing. Like, I'm lucky enough to know a lot of these guys personally, and so I was calling them too, asking those same questions. So I'm coming at it from the perspective of asking the questions for a really long time and getting a hold of these guys, and now joining the team. It's fun getting to be on the flip side of that and answering those questions for others. That's been a super rewarding thing. It falls back into that same vein of education. And now I luckily get paid to research that gear. Like, now that question of time versus money, now that's where that money's being invested, is the time that I spend on researching gear so that I can turn back those answers to those guys quickly.
Perfect. Yep. Copy. What sets, I mean, obviously, Gear Fool, we have a brick and mortar store here in Cedar City, Utah. Come on in. We'd love to see you. But obviously gearfool.com is where we do a lot of our transactions. There's tons of e-commerce options out there. But what sets us different? What makes Gear Fool different than other sources?
I mean, I'll lead there. I'll say that Gear Fool is 100% approachable wherever you are on the spectrum of experience, newbie to most advanced expert. But, I mean, quite frankly, look at the team. We've got myself. I do come from an urban background. I'm also, I believe I'm the only veteran on the team here in Huntin Fool and Gear Fool. I do have that background to include developmental flight tests, and then you got the opposite end of the spectrum. You've got, Austin Atkinson. The guy's been guiding in Alaska for Dall sheep for, 13 plus years. There's a lot of real world experience. We're gonna come at you, friendly and we're gonna help you out no matter where you are, and essentially just get you to achieve the similar performance maybe and experience as what we've had favorably. So I think we just have a diverse, background amongst all of us. So
I like that word, approachability. I think that's a key in today's. It's hard to get a hold of anybody anymore. Mm-hmm. That's why we have. Both of you are technically act as gear consultants, right, at the end of the day. But that's why we specifically seek those kind of positions out, because of approachability.
Yeah, we really just, ask us a question quite simply, and then, we couldn't be more pleased or enthusiastic to answer it. We want to help people out and get them set up and get them on the road to success on the trail.
Yeah, we share an inbox that stays at pretty much 0 at the end of every day. So that.
Yeah, we beat that up pretty bad, but we enjoy the process of doing so.
Yeah, that's awesome. The most fun part is when people reach out with specific questions. It's fun to correspond with them, and yeah, we have the advantage is being nimble at this point to respond to those really quickly.
Nice. What is the best email to reach out?
Well, if you go to gearfool.com, you can reach contact page there, but ultimately if you send an email to info@gearfool.com, it'll come to our community inbox, the team here at Gearfool, to include Anna, and we'll see it, and we'll usually reply same day, if not next day, for business days, of course, if we're not in the field. So
perfect.
Do the best we can.
Forrest, we've touched on it a couple times. How do you think your military service in particular might impact sort of your even, deciding what brands to carry, what products to carry, et cetera? How does that overall maybe impact you?
So defense contracts and the awardment thereof is quite complex. My last 3 years on active duty, I was on the H-1 developmental flight test team, where they entrusted myself, one other crew chief, and 4 pilots to really vet whether it was an airframe change or a software change or a flight equipment change, new weapon system. It was on us as a select team, I'll put it, based on our experience, to really vet it to see if it was a viable alternative for the warfighter in the Fleet Marine Force. We didn't take it lightly. Yeah. We've seen some good systems come through that had all the marketing and all the jazz, and then ultimately we put it to the test, and it wasn't so impressive as they had suggested. But, I did have brothers and even sisters in the fleet, and I didn't take that responsibility lightly.
Right.
I've carried that on into my civilian life. And, reaching back on the info@gearfool.com, you get an email from an older gentleman or any age gentleman that says, hey, I'm going to go chase moose in Alaska. I've been wanting to do this all my life.
Right.
I only get this one shot. I might not get a second shot.
Yep.
I want to make the best experience I can possibly do. Here's my budget. And, carrying that over from the Marine Corps, this job is a perfect fit on the gear side. Like I said, if someone's looking for words of affirmation on the coaching for a moose hunt, I'm not the dude. You're not going to get it over here. It's just the nature of my character. But if you're looking for the technical side of the gear, man, I couldn't be more excited to want to answer those kind of questions. And I think the rest of the team here at Gearfool feels the same.
Yeah. Jake, you haven't had any military experience, but you've had plenty of experiences trucking around out in the woods, some with me, and then ultimately a lot of years on your own. Tell me, give me a little hardship story that taught you an important lesson at some point in time about the importance of gear selection.
Well, one, I'm good at the words of affirmation. I'll get you on that. With my teaching background, really, really good at words of affirmation.
Well, that's why we have a team, right? Good balance.
That's right. That's right.
Wasn't field testing military equipment. I didn't know you did that for us. That's awesome.
Yeah, I ended up doing that for the last 3 years on active. Yeah,
that is super cool.
It was a unique experience. Yeah, pushing airframes to flight envelopes that they hadn't been in before to see if they were, viable, determining where the safety threshold and advising the fleet essentially on those parameters. Yeah, it was a good time.
Good time. Good time. I think that's relative. I don't think everyone would see that as a good time.
Well, when the fleet gets broadcasted that the minigun's burst limit is 18 seconds, well, someone has to identify that it is 18 seconds. So that's some of the better
that does
days
sound
on
like
that
fun,
job.
actually.
Yeah,
it was a good time. Yeah, but
no, that's awesome. Back to your question on hardship in the field. One of the big things for me was those for a long time, like you and I hunted together a whole lot, but there was a period of time early in college where, you were down in Cedar, I was at Montana State University. We didn't see each other a whole lot. When we were in high school, didn't kind of drifted away from hunting because it's, as I mentioned earlier, it's always been our livelihood. So it was always a big part of the family. So it almost was something that you kind of took for granted. Like I look back now and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe the super cool hunting experiences I was blessed with at such a young age. So I took it for granted. And then when I started realizing in college that like, oh my gosh, I need to be in the mountains hunting. Like this is really, I need this right now. This is good for me. Honestly, part of it was a little bit of arrogance that I did, grown up in a hunting family. I was like, I should know how to do all of this stuff. And frankly, I didn't pay a whole lot of attention when I was younger. What that equated to was a lot of unnecessary hardship in the field of, hard lessons learned, like that for the very first time I went out archery elk hunting by myself. I didn't even read the regs well enough to know that I could have killed an elk probably in the first 15 minutes of the hunt. I slept through my alarm, rolled out of bed. There was like a spike bull right in front of me. It was in a unit where you could have actually shot one. Stood there. We made eye contact for about 20 minutes. Then he walked away, and that was the most success I saw in archery elk hunting for about 2 years. The rest of the time was a lot harder than that, and a big part of that was that there weren't yet one that I was reluctant to reach out and ask for a lot of help, but two, there's just not a lot of good resources for that kind of help, and that's again where I was really excited to come onto the Gearful team, is that I can help those individuals out too. Again, reaching anybody on any end of the spectrum, where we can meet people where they're at and help onboard them onto something that I think is one of the most meaningful hobbies a person can have, and one of the most important experiences that somebody can have in their life, spending time in the outdoors, providing for themselves and their family, helping onboard people who, like, I can't even imagine if I hadn't grown up in a hunting family, I can't even imagine where I would have started. It's so overwhelming, like all of the choices and all the stuff that you have to learn. That's what I'm excited about helping people with.
Perfect.
Much agreed.
Do you have any particular hardship stories that were hunting related, non-military related?
Back in 2005 when I moved to Utah here in Cedar City, back then it was you pick up your mossy oak or your real tree from the local Walmart. You usually have your blue jeans on, a pair of Wranglers, and some leather Justin boots. Now, back then you didn't know any better and you were still getting after it, but that was in my youth. My wife and I were cutting firewood to make ends meet in those days when fire season wasn't, active.
Yep.
And I've made it a little further on in my life through the years, 39 now. Fortunately, I've had some disposable income. I've looked at some of the gear options through the years, and I've always made some kind of an investment, some kind of an effort, and I've seen where it pays dividends, Whether I do it for myself or whether it's for my wife. My oldest daughter's going to hunt this year. She's going to have some good footwear. She'll have some good insulating layers. I'll make sure she's taken care of because, Jake's over here smiling and pointing at Dad. But, I've heard the horror stories. Here's your alley-oop, Jerrod, of the parent that just drags the kids through the mountains. It's just a more challenging experience than it might need be, but
I didn't make it as fun as I should have been. Pro tip.
Well, my 12-year-old daughter.
For all you dads and moms out there introducing kids to hunting.
Yeah, my 12-year-old daughter, Emma, I bet she doesn't weigh 70, 75 pounds. So
right.
With her taking part in the upcoming rifle season here in Utah, it's going to be a little cooler out there, a little brisk for her.
Yep.
I'm not just going to throw her out in a 100% cotton hoodie necessarily. Not that there's anything wrong with that,
Yep.
I feel bad at the same time if Dad's fully outfitted and then my oldest daughter is, holy cow, Dad, I'm freezing over here. What the heck's going on?
It's like Dumb and Dumber. Here, take my extra gloves.
Yeah. Yeah. But another caveat, if you will, on the gear is when I did leave active duty, I did my research. I got my first pack. It had the meat shelf, and I was like, I'm in the game. The stars aligned that first year. Ended up killing an elk. It was a cow elk with my bow. My brother and I, not necessarily the smartest with knowing when to not go any further off the trail. Anyway, we got ourselves in a pickle, and we packed it all out in one effort, and the pack did not ride as well as I was expecting. it was beautiful when it was 30 to 40 pounds, but then, a half of a cow elk, and it's like, man, I don't have anything to compare this to, but there's got to be something better,
Right.
So then I started branching even further outward, checking out some more backpacks with some different brands, and lo and behold, there are improvements. There's strengths and weaknesses across many brands and many product categories. So I dig it.
Well, I think that's a good segue into gear that warrants a no expenses spared point of view. So every hunt's different, so it's not really fair to say these are my top 5 things I'm going to take on every single hunt. I mean, there are some, right? But like, what areas would you guys recommend if you're going to stretch your budget? Like, what particular pieces of gear are the most important to try to go the extra mile?
For me, it's going to lead off with communication / navigation. I want to have cheap insurance when I'm out there, that I can have comms back with the homestead, young kids in the house and such. Someone's running a high fever or whatever it may be, but comm navigation is going to be number one for me.
Yep.
Secondly, quite honestly, it's going to be a fire starter. I want a high quality fire starter that's going to provide a concentrated spark on whatever my tinder may be, because I don't want to be, got to choose my words wisely here. Can't, use profanity.
You can't go
but
military on me right now for us.
You're lucky I'm not throwing down acronyms left and right. But I want to have that reliability, right? And then thereafter, it's going to step up into what I think is the quite obvious footwear, backpack. It don't matter if you have the Gucci water filtration purification system. If you're hauling that around for a weeks-long effort with a pack that don't ride well, then you're probably going to head to the truck or the trailhead more sooner anyway, right?
Yep.
But, I mean, I guess that's only 4. I don't know if you asked for 5 or if that was just me blacking out over here. But
blacked him out.
Lastly, I mean, I'd probably anchor it with a good knife, just for that safety consideration should you succeed. That's where I'm at. So what about you, Jake?
Communication, no. Nobody knows.
You're still
needs
running
to know where
solo,
I am.
right?
Yeah.
By the way, Jake Lile is singing. No, yeah.
I just usually forget to tell anybody where I'm at. Don't tell mom.
Comes with
which we do not recommend, by the way.
No, you
I want
should.
to disclaim that.
No. Yeah.
I've started texting people where I'm at after I almost got bit by a rattlesnake at like 10,000 feet. I didn't even know they could be up that high. It was ridiculous, but yeah, that spooked me last season, and I tell people where I'm at now. I was trying to think how fast I could run down a mountain before rattlesnake venom gets to you.
Not fast enough.
No. I was doing some bro science in my head. No, definitely, just like you, I mean, boots and pack obviously are going to be things that are going to drastically improve your experience if you have really nice boots and a really nice pack that rides well and your feet are comfortable. That's huge. For me, I used to get really, really cold all the time when I was hunting. And so when I finally got some decent insulation layers, like particularly glassing, one of the things that I think is hard for a hunter starting out, or at least was really hard for me, was learning patience. I'm not a very patient guy. I like to get up and go. Not a very good fisherman. That's why I liked elk hunting more, because there's a lot more movement involved. But what I found is oftentimes I usually would stop glassing half an hour earlier than I should. Part of that too was though I would just get cold.
Freezing.
And so
shivering.
Having insulation layers for when I stop and glass has been a real game changer for me. It's led to, multiple successful harvests now. That happened directly because I took that extra half hour of glassing, because I knew that I could sit there and be comfortable. So insulation layers are really, really big for me. It's still having decent navigation, not necessarily communication back, but always having a GPS and my Onyx maps. I like having the backup, just knowing I like that peace of mind, especially when I am going in all by myself and I realize half an hour into the hike that I didn't tell anybody where I was. I do like I do like having that backup of the GPS, and then probably my binoculars, my optics.
Yeah, optics are hard to argue. I mean, you can go from $250 for a pair of binos up to the latest NL Pures at 12x42 for, I don't know, $3,400. That's a broad spectrum there.
It is,
and that's a tough one to make a decision on. If a guy is the budget's limited, for example. I mean, that can outfit someone entirely and buy some tags, to be honest. So I wouldn't let quality gear and the waiting of procuring quality gear prevent someone from getting in the field.
Absolutely.
Do it consciously, do it strategically. But at the same time, just because you don't have the best and brightest doesn't mean that you can't get out there and get after it at the same time. Experience is priceless.
100%.
You need to start today,
Yep.
So.
Agreed. Okay. I'm in full agreement. I would say one extra thing. I think shelter has come about as far as any piece of gear out there when it comes to lightweight, portable, comfortable shelter materials and or shelters in total. So I think shelter's another one that the older I get, the more likely I am to stay the night somewhere as opposed to hiking back and forth and deadheading, 2 hours
Exhausting
of hiking.
that energy. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's another one too, but I totally agree with the top of the list there. So we can probably move on from that. In fact, another related question would be, what kinds of brand acquisitions have we recently worked on? What kinds of things are you bringing on board? Are there,
We've had a few brands for several months now. Sitka, Stone Glacier, Jetboil, many other staple brands in the industry. But ever so recently, we brought on very hard Swarovski. We've also brought in Leica, Revit, Gunworks. Looking at a few other ultra lightweight shelter manufacturers that we didn't even know existed 3 weeks ago. But it's nice to see that brands are approaching us and wanting to get their products in our stores. So that's the latest additions we've seen so far. Yeah.
Copy that. Well, are there any other things you guys want to touch on before we start to wrap the podcast up? Anything on your hearts and minds?
Jake, lead.
I think an important point that Forrest made that I'd like to reiterate is you should start now. Again, if you can't afford the gear, people have been doing this. I mean, you look at the pictures of Grandpa Lile. Like, people have been doing it in blue jeans and flannels and for a really, really long time. And you can start, I've always said that hunting is cumulative. Like, the amount of work that you put into it, it compounds over time. Like, all that time that I spent not asking the right questions. Yeah. And blowing up stocks and just making a lot of bad choices. I never let myself get too upset about that because I felt that was all money in the bank. You're storing it up. Eventually it's going to pay off. And, very recently it really has started paying off for me. And it's something and when I first started, I really didn't have as good of gear. Slowly but surely, I'm one of the guys that I onboard a really nice, expensive piece of gear about every year. And I plan it out 2 or 3 years in advance. I know that last year I knew that this would be the year that I get a better rangefinder instead of the one that we picked up off of the road in Nevada.
On a deer hunt. I feel like you two are peas in a pod as it relates to this gear planning thing and acquisition strategy.
So yeah, I mean, just start now. It's money in the bank with the experience. Yes, that gear is going to give you that next level edge, and it's going to change things for you, and it's going to be way more comfortable, and you're going to find greater success. But start now because you need the experience first and foremost.
Yeah, it's a combination of gear and experience. Neither one of them in and of themselves. Experience is going to be more valuable than gear, if I'm honest, at the end of the day for success in the field. But the two together make a beautiful hunt.
Yeah, I mean, truly enhancement of the experience. Yeah, you can be fully Gucci'd out in year one. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to even find the elk, for example, right? But at the same time, to kind of add on to that, get started now. Knowledge and experience is priceless in its own right. I mean, there is a truth to the saying that if it's miserable, it's memorable.
Yeah.
So it's all about the memories, right? It's all about, is the 8-year-old boy or the 80-year-old man of yourself going to look back at you in the present time and say, I did it right, or he did it right? You know, it's more about that than it is anything else, at least in my opinion. So yeah, if it's memorable or if it's miserable, it's all too often memorable. Get out there and get started. But if you are looking to get something, a little different than the old blue jeans pair of Wranglers, then, we've got the experience. We've got a killer team here. We've got incredible products, and, we're here to help you.
Yeah.
Just simply reach out, and
well,
see what we can do.
That's where I was going to go next, too, as we get close to wrapping up is, I used to go into pro shops when I was young, and a lot of times you would run into egos inside those archery pro shops, and it was off-putting, and I didn't feel comfortable asking questions. I didn't feel comfortable learning. But again, I want to tie this back to approachability. I know for a fact that if you call into Gear Fool and talk to anyone here, if you send an email, any form of communication, you're going to be hit with welcome arms and humble people who are just excited to help you out and help you outfit and get better experiences out of the field. Better memories, to your point.
Better memories, yeah.
Yeah. So, well, to disclose the promo code, it's built2hunt. And the word "to" is spelled T-O. There are no spaces. So built, T-O, hunt. And that'll get you select products. You'll get savings on select products throughout the gearfool.com website. I do want to shout back out to the Gear Fool YouTube channel. You touched on it briefly with the snow camping trip.
You're right.
You guys filmed that for our Gear Fool YouTube channel, if I recall.
Did. Yeah, we did that early impression / early review of the Sky Solus one-person tent. Yeah, but I mean that kind of leads into the authentic vetting process. You know, back there on the YouTube channel, just somewhat recently, we did that 2023 pack comparison video. We brought in packs of brands that we don't offer at retail willingly.
Yep.
We looked at them from an unbiased point of view. Brady and we loaded it up with 50 pounds and we did a mile. We did that 5 times, once each pack, each person.
Yep.
Then we loaded it up with 100 pounds of sand and we did the same exact thing. At the end, we gave our 2 cents. That goes hand in hand with our wanting to be very authentic in our vetting process, and we hope that helps other people. Honestly, if you have a question for me on a product we don't sell, I'm just going to answer it straight. I'm going to tell you the pros and the cons, and if that's the way you want to go, then that's not necessarily a problem. But
Yep. No, but I know that unequivocally. That's why it was an easy decision for this partnership. So Gear Fool YouTube channel, check it out. Like the videos, subscribe, turn on your notifications. That all helps us continue to create that content. We're going to create it on behalf of the viewers and on behalf of our customers with Gear Fool. And then same's true here on the Built to Hunt podcast. We always appreciate subscribes and downloads. Those help us out as well. But in conclusion, we'll wrap it up. Again, Built to Hunt gets you select discount on some items throughout the site. It's not site-wide, but it'll help you out. And we appreciate your time, Forrest and Jake, very much, and hope you all have an awesome fall and make the most of great gear.